Is DeFi regulation an oxymoron? What I learned about crypto regulation from a week in DC. Engaging with regulators is more likely to keep DeFi healthy than pretending they don't exist. We're nearing the end of policy week here at CoinDesk, which I've spent focused on the particularly thorny issues of regulating decentralized finance, DeFi. The technology, which removes intermediaries like banks and exchanges from asset trading, may require a major rethink of how securities regulation works. In the short term, though, there will likely be serious crackdowns that test the reality of that decentralization. There has been a recurring theme in the reactions to these pieces, that DeFi subjected to any sort of limits or controls whatsoever isn't really DeFi. On one level, that's true enough, as crypto lawyer extraordinaire Stephen Pally laid out when discussing enforcement. The sort of kill switches or other controls necessary for regulation to work are usually controlled by a small group of insiders. It's an open question whether entirely open and anonymous DeFi systems will be able to survive once enforcement really gets rolling. But on another level, knee-jerk declarations that only anonymous systems qualify as DeFi are narrow-minded. There are unique features to the technology, such as self-custody and shared liquidity pools, that don't depend on anonymity and that could offer real benefits to the way we run mainstream asset markets. It seems entirely fair to debate whether DeFi is still the right term for permission trading protocols, but we should also be careful not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. That's particularly true because DeFi could lead to innovations in Know Your Customer, KYC, practices that would significantly increase privacy and security for individuals even in a regulated environment. This morning, we published a conversation with Fireblocks CEO Michael Shalov that delves into this soft KYC. Personally, I think the best case scenario long term is that a large portion of DeFi gets regulated, and slowly eats away at more traditional trading technologies. Meanwhile, a smaller group of protocols that are truly and carefully decentralized will continue operating outside of regulation. The stakes are quite different, but you might compare it to the way online media piracy has evolved. Law enforcement has applied enough pressure to make it really hard to continue running a torrent site, prayers up for what? CD, but you can still find all the free Game of Thrones you could ask for if you're willing to do some research and take some risks. The specific benefits of keeping stateless DeFi alive include giving dissidents and others access to tools that circumvent governments and corporations. That option only becomes more important as government and corporate oversight of our finances and internet activity becomes more terrifyingly normalized. Just as Bitcoin will serve as a useful check on misguided national monetary policies, cultivating autonomous zones outside of state control will be a check on the most authoritarian impulses of lawmakers and regulators. And just as the stateless utility of Bitcoin is improved by the continued health of regulated centralized exchanges and other fiat on-ramps, regulated DeFi might be a net positive for its free-range counterpart. Both that potential and the concrete utilitarian benefits of even regulated DeFi make it worth thinking seriously about regulation, instead of just dismissing it out of hand. Crypto has arrived in the capital and concerns about stablecoins are very real. Nick Haleshta, CoinDesk's managing editor for global policy and regulation, takes stock. Within a 36-hour period, the first Bitcoin futures exchange traded fund, ETF, began trading. The underlying cryptocurrency hit a new all-time high and federal lawmakers dusted off their 2019-era concerns about the Facebook-linked stablecoin Project Diem. I spent most of DC FinTech Week in the U.S. Capital to reconnect with people I haven't seen in 2 years and put faces to folks I've emailed during the coronavirus pandemic but never actually met. In these conversations, I found that the policy/legislative landscape around crypto has greatly matured since my last visit. Federal lawmakers who couldn't care less in 2019 are planning to propose legislation regulating different aspects of the industry in the coming months. There's also a better understanding of crypto. A lot of the regulatory reaction in late 2019 was focused on the Thin Libra project, which was announced by social media giant Facebook that summer. Libra, at the time, was a pretty visionary project that policymakers saw as having the potential to destabilize the financial system. The project, now named Diem, has been fairly quiet over the past 10 months, this week's news notwithstanding, and we're seeing lawmakers focusing on broader swaths of the industry. What happens in 2022 will depend on how the industry handles these issues and how regulators react to the industry. It's still early. You'd be forgiven for thinking that all of Washington, D.C., is focused on crypto issues right now. There's been no shortage of regulators and policymakers revealing new work around crypto, whether that's the President's Working Group for Financial Markets pending stablecoin report, the Fed's pending central bank digital currency report, Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, Chairman Gary Gensler's increased comments on registration and regulation of crypto exchanges, or the Commodity Futures Trading Commission's, CFTC, recent spate of enforcement actions against industry businesses. For all that, it's still pretty early for the industry. A lot of lawmakers have heard of crypto, but it's not a pressing concern for them. And this is even after the industry helped delay a massive, bipartisan infrastructure bill due to a single provision that impacted it. The crypto industry is ramping up its engagement with Washington. In a feature for CoinDesk's Crypto 2022 Policy Week coverage, Rob Garver wrote that companies and trade groups are increasing the number of lobbyists tasked with pushing for crypto-friendly regulations. This engagement, however, is sort of mixed. At least one congressional staffer described interacting with newer lobbyists as being painful, an observation I've heard echoed by other industry participants. We're also seeing an increase in angry tweets and other social media messages directed at specific lawmakers or regulators. I'm told that these are extremely unhelpful in terms of communicating policy concerns. Great for engagement, though.